Beloved. That is the word millions still whisper when they say her name. Beloved for her laughter, for the sparkle in her eyes, for the way she made an entire generation feel safe in front of a glowing television screen. But at 75, when the lights had dimmed and the applause had faded into memory, Cindy Williams finally sat down in a quiet room and confirmed the rumors that had followed her like shadows for decades. And what she revealed was not the cheerful story Hollywood preferred to tell. The camera would open slowly, drifting through a dimly lit living room filled with photographs, black and white stills from early auditions, a framed shot from the set of Laverne Shirley, a younger Cindy smiling beside Penny Marshall, arms wrapped together in the kind of friendship that looks unbreakable. Yet the room feels heavy. There is silence between the pictures, silence that suggests something unsaid for far too long. Cindy's voice, softer now with age, begins not with glamour, but with exhaustion. She admits that the rumors were not entirely wrong. For years, tabloids whispered about tension, betrayal, illness, and quiet suffering. Fans speculated about why she left at the height of her fame, why the laughter stopped so abruptly, why the woman who seemed so full of life slowly withdrew from the spotlight. She speaks about the early days first, the thrill of being cast, the magic of working with Penny Marshall, whose energy could electrify an entire studio audience, the influence of Gary Marshall, whose creative vision shaped the show into a cultural phenomenon. Cindy describes the feeling of standing under hot studio lights, hearing laughter ripple through the crowd, believing that this moment would last forever. But behind the laughter, there were contracts, negotiations, expectations, and there was pressure that began to crack something fragile inside her. So, he confirms that her departure from the show was not simply a scheduling disagreement. It was heartbreak. It was fear. She reveals that she was pregnant at the time, and complications were looming. Doctors had warned her that the stress was dangerous, but Hollywood does not pause for motherhood. Scripts were rewritten without her. Decisions were made quickly. She felt cornered, abandoned, betrayed by a system she had trusted. The rumors about her falling out with Penny Marshall had haunted her for decades. Cindy's eyes well with tears as she clarifies what truly happened. It was not hatred. It was not rivalry. It was two women under enormous pressure, caught in a storm neither created. She admits there were harsh words, moments of silence, phone calls that never came. She describes the pain of watching interviews where the story was simplified into something petty and dramatic. In truth, it was far more human and far more tragic. She then shifts to something darker, the illness that few knew about. Years after leaving the show, Cindy began experiencing symptoms she couldn't explain. Fatigue that swallowed her days, anxiety that kept her awake at night, a quiet battle with depression that felt almost shameful for someone known for making others laugh. She confirms that there were nights when she questioned everything, her choices, her faith, even her worth. She remembers sitting alone after hearing of Penny Marshall's passing. The news hit her like a physical blow. She whispers that she never fully healed the fracture between them. That regret stayed with her. The last message she sent was simple, filled with hope for reconciliation. She never received a reply. The guilt of unfinished conversations haunted her long after. The documentary lingers on her marriage, her divorce, the strain that fame placed on her family. She speaks about arguments behind closed doors, about the loneliness of being adored by millions, but misunderstood at home. She confirms that there were days her children saw her cry quietly in the kitchen, believing they were asleep. She confesses that success did not protect her from feeling invisible. And then there are the whispers about financial troubles, about faded opportunities, about being difficult. She admits she became guarded, defensive, protective of her health and her children. Hollywood labeled her complicated. She calls it survival. Her voice trembles as she reveals something that shakes even her most devoted fans. She says she carried a secret diagnosis for years, refusing to let it define her publicly. The stress, the anxiety, the long hours, it all took a toll that could not be undone. She chose silence because she did not want pity. She wanted dignity. In this first confession at 75, Cindy does not appear bitter. She appears reflective. There is sadness, yes, but also clarity. She confirms the rumors were born from fragments of truth, twisted by distance and misunderstanding. The truth, she says, was always more fragile. As the room grows quieter, she looks directly into the camera. She admits that fame was both her greatest gift and her deepest wound. She says the laughter you heard on television was real, but so were the tears that fell when the studio doors closed. And just as she begins to describe the moment she nearly walked away from everything entirely, her voice falters. She takes a long breath. The screen fades slightly as her words hang in the air, unfinished but heavy with meaning. The room is darker now. Shadows stretch across the walls as Cindy leans back in her chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She begins to speak about the friendships that shaped her life and the betrayals that nearly broke her. She recalls late nights on set with Gary Marshall, watching him charm the crew, light up the room, mask the tensions beneath. She admired him truly, but she admits, with a shiver of regret, that she sometimes felt invisible in that brilliance, that she was valued for the laughter she could provoke, not for the woman she truly was. Cindy confesses that Hollywood's praise is a fickle currency. She talks about auditions where she felt dismissed, opportunities that slipped away quietly, and agents who advised her to tone down her personality to fit the mold. She remembers thinking, "Do I have to erase myself to survive?" It was a question that haunted her for decades, and every time she stepped into a new role, there was the quiet tension of balancing authenticity with expectation. She admits that sometimes she failed. Sometimes she hid pieces of herself to avoid conflict, and those pieces were never returned. She shifts to the darker chapters, the tragedies that never made headlines. Cindy talks about a close friend, a fellow actress, who died unexpectedly in her 30s. The grief was suffocating. She admits that she spent nights trembling in her bed, imagining the life she could have had if tragedy hadn't struck so often around her. There were other losses, too. The end of marriages, friendships that dissolved under pressure, the silence of family members who didn't understand the cost of fame. She whispers that sometimes she wondered if the world would have noticed if she simply vanished. She simply vanished. Then come the moments of profound self-reflection. Cindy reveals that she regrets the way she sometimes allowed ambition to overshadow connection. She confesses that in pursuit of career success, she lost moments with her children she could never reclaim. Birthdays, school recitals, quiet evenings at home, they became casualties of a life the public only saw in snapshots. She admits that the guilt never faded. It lingers like smoke, she says, her voice barely audible, as if speaking louder might make it real. Her tone changes when she begins to speak about her health, the silent battle that few could see. Cindy describes nights when panic gripped her chest, the exhaustion that made even getting out of bed a Herculean task. Doctors whispered terms she didn't fully understand at first, but she knew it was serious. She kept it private, even from those closest to her, fearing pity or judgment. She says now, looking back, that the secrecy was both a shield and a prison. "I was living in a cage of my own making," she confesses, and for decades, she didn't know how to escape. Cindy opens up about the rumors that plagued her, the whispered tales of Hollywood difficult, the speculation about why she disappeared from major roles. She admits that the public's perception was often cruel, yet in some ways, she allowed it to shape her narrative. She would nod, smile, and move on, all the while carrying the weight of misunderstood intentions. "People don't ask what's behind the laughter," she murmurs. "They only remember the punchline." Finally, she touches on the relationships that mattered most. She speaks of love that was fleeting, of partnerships that promised stability but delivered heartbreak. She recounts intimate moments of tenderness that no camera ever captured, nights when she felt truly seen, and nights when she felt utterly alone. Cindy admits that those she loved, not to death but to distance and miscommunication, left scars deeper than any tabloid headline. She says softly, almost to herself, "I have cried more in silence than I ever have in front of anyone." As the segment draws to a close, Cindy pauses, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She leans forward, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and relief. She admits that confirming the rumors isn't about vindication. It's about truth, about finally telling the story in her own words, for herself and for those who truly care. And with that, she sits quietly, letting the weight of decades hang in the air, the audience feeling every regret, every hidden sorrow, and every lost opportunity with her. Cindy's hands shake slightly as she reaches for a photograph on the table. It's a snapshot of her younger self, smiling beside Henry Winkler, Penny Marshall laughing behind them, the set of Laverne Shirley alive with chaos and camaraderie. She stares at it for a long moment, as if trying to reconcile that joyful image with the private pain she has carried all these years. Her voice cracks when she begins to speak about envy, the kind Hollywood never admits exists, not toward co-stars exactly, but toward the freedom they seem to possess. Cindy admits that watching others glide effortlessly through fame, while she battled illness, heartbreak, and betrayal, was an ache she rarely voiced. She leans back, her eyes distant, recounting a series of near breakdowns on set. "I was terrified someone would see me unravel," she whispers. There were moments when she would step off the stage or away from the cameras, and the walls of laughter would close in, suffocating. She describes clutching scripts like lifelines, reciting lines while the panic rose in her chest, convincing herself that if she could just perform, she could survive. Behind the scenes, her colleagues saw on, lie the polished Cindy Williams, never the trembling, exhausted woman beneath. Woman beneath. Her narrative turns to the friendships that saved her and those that quietly betrayed her. She speaks of actors and producers who promised loyalty but vanished at the first hint of trouble. There were mentors who offered advice that felt like guidance but often carried hidden expectations. She names names softly, careful to speak respectfully, but the tension in her voice betrays the hurt that lingered for decades. Cindy admits that in those years, trust became a fragile commodity, something she hoarded like precious gems, yet could not protect from the cruel light of rumor and assumption. Cindy recounts the financial struggles that compounded her personal turmoil. "People think success lasts forever," she says, shaking her head. "They don't tell you the moment the checks stop matching the image you've built, or that contracts can vanish, or that old friends suddenly become distant strangers." She reveals how she once considered walking away from acting entirely, retreating to a quiet life to escape the pressures and the constant public gaze. But there was something inside her, a stubborn spark, that refused to let her vanish completely. That spark, she confesses, saved her from despair, but never erased the scars. Then comes the confession that will shock even the most devoted fans. Cindy admits that for years she struggled with a secret, an inner battle she kept hidden even from those closest to her. Anxiety that left her sleepless, depressive episodes that stole entire weeks, nights of panic where she felt her heart might literally stop. She had sought help quietly, through therapy, through whispered conversations with doctors, but Hollywood's expectation of perpetual brightness forced her to smile while bleeding inside. "It was exhausting," she murmurs. "Exhausting to be everyone's favorite actress, everyone's symbol of joy while feeling invisible in my own life." She pauses, and the room seems to shrink around her. Cindy speaks of the rumors again, of whispers that she had become difficult, unreliable, or too sensitive. The truth, she says softly, is far more human and heartbreaking. There were days when she simply could not go on, when the weight of expectation pressed her into silence. She kept the struggles private because she feared pity, judgment, and worse, the erasure of everything she had built. The audience begins to understand. The Cindy Williams they adored was only part of the story. And then she speaks of the family fractures that fame exacerbated. She recalls quiet dinners filled with tension, arguments that erupted over trivial matters but masked deeper pain, the sorrow of missed milestones, and the invisible weight of being a mother and a star simultaneously. Cindy admits to moments when she cried alone, hiding her tears so her children wouldn't worry, so the world wouldn't see weakness. "I wanted them to have normalcy," she whispers, "even if it meant sacrificing my own." The camera lingers on her face, lined now with time and wisdom, her eyes holding decades of stories. She takes a shaky breath and whispers the words everyone had waited to hear. The rumors were true, in ways no one could have imagined. Pain, illness, heartbreak, regret, and love, they were all there, intertwined in the life behind the laughter. And for the first time, she finally acknowledges them fully, openly, without apology. Without apology.